All right. Welcome in, everybody. Monday morning, we have got the ELF Live recap show. I'm here with Matt Bressington. Matt, we were just talking about how we have not done a Monday morning ELF Live recap show for about 7 or 8 months, man. We had ELF football this weekend, and we're going to talk about the games. How you doing, man?
I'm feeling all kinds of things. So many emotions, so much to talk about. So many players I want to talk. I'm gonna at some point have to skip over some players because there's just so much that happened this week. And I do apologize in advance, but this was everything I hoped it would be and more. It was phenomenal. I loved every second of it.
It just feels good to have ELF football back in our lives. The whole offseason, you didn't realize there's this void just within us. And I realized it was because ELF football wasn't here. And now I'm just all gassed up and excited. I got to go to the Frankfurt Surge game yesterday. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about all the games. What's up to everybody in the chat? Thomas Lustig, ELFpedia, my man Marcus. Matt, I met Marcus in person. I gave him a big hug. And it was just great to meet the man that we've got here in the chat. Lucas W, what's going on? Whew. All right, guys, we got a lot to talk about, and as you see right there in the bottom bar, ELF week 1 had a little bit of everything, guys. Matt, we had some really tight games. We had a couple kind of blowouts, of course, but those were to be expected a little bit. Some things that maybe surprised some people, and man, we got Alex Mauchow. This man broadcast 2 games this week: the Rhine Fire game against Paris on Saturday, and then he comes back and he broadcasts your boys, Matt, the Prague Lions against the Vienna Vikings. Malchow loves to be able to broadcast on MVP, man. Matt, let's take a look here, Max. If you'll throw it up, the graphic here of all of the games. And Matt, just give me some of your general thoughts and feelings and emotions after you got to sleep on everything that happened this weekend.
I think the main thing is the establishment of like rivalries within the league. We've got Munich and the Raiders. Those guys are, getting a little bit chippy. Definitely emotions flying high. Galaxy versus Surge. We talked about it as well. That one's starting to really progress as a rivalry. Hamburg and the Bravos was even getting a little bit chippy because that's definitely getting there. And then Paris and Ryan as well. That rivalry's growing. Everything is just really, really coming together. And some of these guys aren't even in the same conference. Yeah, the rivalries are starting to get really, really heated. I love it.
Hey man, this is something that I think is really good. Just like some of those tensions that are building. And like I said, I was at the Frankfurt Surge game, and I'll tell you what, it was a tense game. It was very chippy. There's a lot of little after the whistle activities. And you know what? This is a good thing. We like these emotions. We like these rivalries building. But just what you said, dude, I love that T-Roll and Munich Ravens rivalry that's building there a little bit. We're saying they're close in proximity, and there's a lot of tension there, and it'll be cool to see them play again against each other. Marcus, it was awesome to see you, Nick. Nice t-shirt you had, by the way. Oh yeah, Matt. Marcus got me a Surge t-shirt yesterday.
Oh, what a guy.
I rolled up just wearing a black t-shirt. I didn't have any Surge merch on the sidelines. So it was a fun weekend, man. It was a really, really fun weekend. So guys, what we've got for you today is we're going to buzz through all of the games, do a little bit of recap, check out some of the highlights, give some of our breakdowns, analysis of the game. Matt, you're going to dive in with some of your expert opinions, maybe some places that you feel like you were justified in your takes last week, and I think you were right about a couple of things. And then at the end of the show, we're going to do, as we will do every Monday, our Citizen MVP of the week. So Matt and I will both select one player to be nominated, okay? And you guys will vote on social media. So stay tuned for that, because Matt, you and I were talking about it. We are going to be taking some input from the chat on who you guys think should possibly be nominated for the MVP of week 1 of the ELF. A lot of fun stuff today. So, Matt, what do you think, man? Should we dive on into some of these games?
Let's go. I can't wait. Let's just get into it. Let's go.
Here we go. All right, everybody. And feel free also to give your thoughts on these games if you watch them live, if you were there in person, and what have you. All right. So starting off with the Fahervar Enthroners at the Wrocław Panthers out there in Poland. Matt, give me some of your thoughts on this one.
We expected the Panthers to be heavy favorites in this one, which my heart was saying I hope the Enthroners will make it close. But in the end of the day, it was DJ Aarons' day. My favorite guy in the league, his day. And then Zozo with a very him performance, another game over 100 yards for him. It's just kind of what he does at this point. We talked about him being maybe a league leading running back this year, and I think he showed flashes of that. On the other side, the Enthroners, they did go all out pass, which I expected them to. You know what? I think Brock Doman deserves a little bit of credit. I think he played well considering the circumstances. He's playing a tough defense. I think he made some really nice throws, and he showed some flashes. You know, the over the middle touchdown was honestly quite a pretty throw.
It was
So I
solid,
think,
yeah.
yeah, that one right there. So I think
That is
he showed some flashes, but overall, Panthers kind of run away with this one. But it was a good game for a little bit.
Yeah. All right. And I think we would be remiss to not talk about one of my favorite players in the entire league, Devin Burrell. This man, well, first of all, this is probably the most unsurprising thing that we can be saying on the show. Devin Burrell had a return touchdown once again. Very,
What?
very unsurprising. Who's surprised by that? It's damn near a week in and week out thing here. But he also had probably one of the coolest pick sixes. Like this should be playing on Sports Center in the United States, the pick six, and hopefully we'll see it here in a little bit on the highlights. I was just so impressed with him. I know Matt was saying, okay, things like this, it's against the Enthroners. However, a defensive player's got to get highlighted for a performance like that. Doesn't matter who you are playing against. If you have a kick return touchdown and a pick six, and it was damn near an 80-yard pick six, whatever it was, we got to talk about that. We got to highlight that. Very impressive. Matt, thoughts on DJ Irons?
I'm still withholding my evaluations. You know,
Okay.
last year I've given an evaluation on him that he disagreed with at the start of the year. But when it comes to reevaluating a player, it's usually 2 games of tape to 5 games of tape. So, you know, he only threw 17 passes. I think he showed a little bit. He showed a lot in the legs as well. He showed he can move around the pocket really well. I said before he was a great athlete. That's never been in doubt. I want to see what he does against a secondary that is a lot more elite than the Enthroners. Because you could argue, and I would argue, the Enthroners probably have the worst secondary in the league. So when he comes against Nordic, I think that'll be a lot more telling. I'm withholding my. I'll give him like a single flower now, Nick, and I'll give him
Okay.
a bunch of flowers maybe next week.
Okay. All right. If DJ Irons is watching the show, you have received one flower from Matt Bressington. Okay, put that up on your wall. And also, it was cool to see Daryl Stewart, obviously with the Surge the last 2 years, to be out there and to be making some plays out there. And this will be an interesting duo, Irons to Stewart this year. I mean, I think they've got a lot of potential there. But yeah, it remains to be seen. Also, when they play perhaps a stronger secondary, but Panthers ultimately run away with this one 55-12. You know what I like also about this one? The Panthers decided, or whoever decided, to put the camera on the opposite side so you can actually see the crowd involved, because they always have pretty good crowds. And previously, the camera was on the crowd side. You could never see it. It always looked empty. But these guys have been packing that stadium there, and there's a lot of enthusiasm for that team. So nice little touch there for the TV broadcast. Whoever made that decision, good decision. You should always be doing that. All right, moving on to our next game. And Matt, this one was probably the most anticipated, or at least one of the most anticipated games of week one. The Rhine Fire at the Paris Musketeers. Paris Musketeers playing in a new stadium, and both of these teams playing with new quarterbacks, one of whom we were very familiar with in the ELF, Chad Jeffries, and one of whom is new to the league, Jalen Henderson, coming from the GFL. Matt, give me your thoughts on this game, which was just a tight 2-point ball game at the end.
It was a very tight game, and it was tight all the way through. I think that Chad and Jalen, neither of them particularly got the pass game completely going. I don't think it's the fault of either of them necessarily. I think it's a reflection of how damn good these defensive units are. You have Kent, who was coaching as the head coach for the Rhine Fire for this game, and then Del Rio, who is an NFL legend when it comes to coaching defenses. And both of that showed in this game because the units were spectacular. The Rhine Fire defensive line was maybe even better than it was last year, and it was still record breaking last year. And then Paris was just so dominant as well. Chad did well though, kind of got it done on his feet, which we saw last year with the Ravens, who was doing that with the Raiders. So we knew that he could do it. We didn't see a ton of the passing game when it came from the Rhine Fire. I know Jordan Boer didn't have too much, Harden didn't have too much, neither did Starkley. When they look at Paris as well, even they didn't really get too much cooking on the passing game. It was more of the run effort for them. Just a hard-nosed kind of defensive style standoff, which I, as a former defensive player, and you also as a former defensive player, will learn to appreciate.
Yeah, hey, we got to put some respect on some of these defensive struggles here. I think also one of the big stories from this game The Paris O-line, man, Jalen was sacked 6 times, and he was on the move, like, all damn day, and this is something that the Paris Musketeers absolutely have got to shore up because, we were very curious to see how Jalen Henderson would translate his talents from the GFL now to the ELF, like, kind of one of the most, anticipated new players in the league, and I think there were flashes, really nice flashes, both with his feet and through the air. I mean, he had a nice, the beautiful touchdown. I think it was to Tekadam, where Tekadam got a little banged up there in the corner. It was a beautiful play right there. And then just getting it done with his feet. I would love to see them perhaps have a little bit more designed runs for Jalen. I felt like every time he was running, it was just off script, just scrambles. I mean, because he's got incredible running ability, man. What do you think?
Absolutely, I agree. We saw it a lot with him in Potsdam. I got
Yeah.
some stick for saying this last week, Nick. And I said, "Oh, the offensive line wasn't that great in Potsdam." And people were like, "Oh, they had allowed the least sacks in the league." Jalen makes things happen with his feet a lot. I don't mean to be rude to Jalen. I love Jeremy and him are good friends. I think he discovered that the burst and explosiveness from ELF defensive lines is a lot more than what he had in Germany. And that was
Yeah, I
the
think
yeah.
I think that's fair here. Okay, all right. Hey, Boss 007, you don't need to spam the chat of Lions play well, all right? You
That's
know
my
what?
burner account.
Is this your burner account, Matt Bressington? You about to put your Lions hat back on? Hey, Boss 007, all right, James Bond? They did play well, and we're gonna
We'll
talk
get
about
to
it
it.
in a couple minutes here. Appreciate you being here, Mr. Bond. Yeah, I agree with you there, and also just I'm very curious to see how the rematch of these two plays out because obviously when you have new quarterbacks, the offenses just weren't totally clicking for either team. Defenses, like you said, man, killing it, and we love a good defensive struggle. We do, but I'm very curious to see how these offensive kind of come together and work out some of these kinks particularly with the O line, because I would love to see Jalen have a little bit more time back there and not feel so frantic and so often having to get flushed out of the pocket. Few times maybe he did a little bit prematurely himself. He could have sat in the pocket there, but he was under pressure all damn day, and so I would love to see them shore that up. But hey, man, Matt, it's just what do you think for when these two teams play each other again?
I mean, they're gonna have to find a way to stop Mascara. I know we don't have the sack numbers for him at the moment, but oh my god, I didn't have that much research into Mascara before the game. The defensive end from Colombia, as Alex Marchal was pointing out, he was phenomenal. That might be one of the best debuting performances I've ever seen from a defensive lineman. He was everywhere, like he was absolutely wrecking them all day. If Paris want to be a contender, which they expect to be, they need to shore up this offensive line. They lost, well, they haven't got Thomas Felicia. They lost Polly Sacramento. They don't have the same offensive line they had last year, and I think that showed a lot.
Yeah, that's that. I think that's for me probably the biggest takeaway from that game is like, hey, they still were very, very competitive and were in a position to win that ball game even in the final drive. And this when Jalen threw the pick at the end. But boy, oh boy, get that figured out because I think if they do, Matt, they are in a serious conversation to be in that contender group, but they have to figure that out, right?
Absolutely agree.
All right, so this one ends 17-15 for the back-to-back champions. Ryan Fire sneaking away with the victory in Paris with their new quarterback, Chad Jeffries. All right, let's move on to our next game. A little bit warm weather going down south to Madrid. The Hamburg Sea Devils at the Madrid Bravos. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the Madrid Bravos did set a ELF attendance record for an ELF game in Spain. It looked pretty packed there. They had a lot of enthusiasm for the squad. 3,340 people in attendance, says our director, Maxi, right here. So that's actually pretty damn good. Good for them. Great debut. Matt, Hamburg had a little bit of chaos this week off the field with the coaching changeup and everything. I was kind of impressed, though, with them going on the road. You got to fly down there to Madrid and putting up a pretty damn good fight. They jumped out up 9-0, and they really were giving Madrid quite a bit of trouble. What are your thoughts on this one?
Me and Carl Kitchens finally came together and agreed on something this week. we were
Hold on, man. Don't gloss over that. Everyone, Matt Bressington and Kyle Kitchen agreed on something. Beautiful.
beautiful, but somehow simultaneously we were both right about different things. So I
Okay.
said before the show, like in last week's show, I said with Lee being the head coach, the offensive line would get better, which we did see. And then we said that Michael Leon, we both had doubts, but who didn't
Sure.
have doubts? It was Kyle Kitchens, and I liked what Michael Leon had in this game. I was messaging the group chats about it. You saw it. I think it was a little bit of JJ and Clark in
You
my.
were saying that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I was saying that. The risk taking that I know I can throw it deep because Terry Robinson's there. Because oh my god, Terry Robinson, welcome back to the league. I know I can hit him because I can just throw it deep because he's got a good arm. I know he came out at the end, which some people have messaged me about a little bit, considering about his injury profile, but he looks solid. I also want to give flowers to Kaya, the running back. I've been following him for years. Like he's been a player I've followed all the way up through under 19 and under 20 level in Germany. He comes in, makes ELF debut, gets over 100 yards of scrimmage. So proud of him. Hamburg have massively earned my respect from this game.
Hey man, same here. Hamburg have really, really skyrocketed in terms of my perception of them. Like we'll see how they move forward here and if they can get some of these things going. But in terms of everything that was going on for them off the field and then traveling, going on the road here, I think they really put up a great performance there. On the Madrid side, okay, got Reed Sinnott, friend of the show. In his ELF debut, all right, and he was connecting with or trying to connect with Aaron Cruikshank, their American wide receiver. They struggled a little bit with the deep ball on a few. Reed maybe overthrew. They finally connected on the deep ball. Looks like an NFL quarterback when you just look at his mechanics and his release and how fast he gets that football out. But they were struggling, man, with the snaps, like 3 or 4 snaps over his head, just having to run around and get the football. That's a tough thing to have to deal with there. But man, I do think that duo of Sinnott and Crookshank could be a scary one as they get maybe a little bit more chemistry, a little bit more reps under their belts. Because, like, man, this dude looked explosive. What do you think?
Yeah, agreed. Like I loved it. He looks so good. Exactly kind of the receiver that Andrew Wandinger loves. You look at Robitaille, you look at Willie Patterson, Cruikshank fits that kind of quick release, explosive playmaker. Is it just a few of those? I think that's kind of maybe we saw a little bit of ring rust from Sinnott. Just
Yeah.
hasn't played a minute, a little bit too much overthrow on some of these plays. But then that last play, he actually was able to make it and they got the long gain. Did they get a little bit lucky though, Nick? I mean, I don't want to be that guy, but they had 2 field goals at the end that they could have definitely went behind. Definitely a bit of a reality check, I think, for Madrid. Because a lot of people, including myself, I'll admit, thought they were just going to kind of steamroll Hamburg. And they definitely didn't. And then they get a little bit lucky with the field goals and they end up
Yeah.
getting a win.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. I think that this was probably the most surprising results of the weekend. Just how tightly Hamburg played Madrid, and we've been kind of raving about Madrid and everything they've got going on down there. And who knows, maybe they will live up to the expectations that we've had. It's week 1. We can't make too many fast judgments on week 1. Kind of anything can happen. And also, when you have a quarterback, no matter how talented, no matter how much experience he has, coming into a new league and adjusting to kind of some of the nuances of playing in the ELF, you got to give him a little bit of grace. That's not to say that Sinnott didn't play well or disappointed us in any way, but we got to give him a little bit of time there to kind of settle into the league. Do you think, Matt, that if you're just going to make a quick judgment off this week 1 situation here, did we jump the gun a little bit talking about Madrid as a contender?
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say we
Mm,
haven't done the gun a little bit. This is a very complicated offense. Takes since week 1. There's definitely going to be growing pains. A lot of players. I talked with Andrew on First Down Magazine about the inexperience of E's. Every single E they have is a new, like players never been an E before, new
true.
to Europe quarterback. I think it's just growing pains. I think come the end of the year, we'll see that explosive offense. I don't think it's time to be setting off the red alarms, but I know that we're in a business where a lot of people like to overreact. But I think with this one, we're gonna be okay. We're gonna be okay.
We are in the overreaction business. Might as well call this show Overreaction Monday. No, I appreciate, Matt, your maturity and not overreacting. Nifty Dude in the chat says, Athletes Forum, Jamal Clay was the only one who didn't underestimate Hamburg. He predicted a possible upset. Okay, Jamal. I didn't know that. Jamal had this. All right, throwing that up there right there. Respect to Jamal for picking that, because I think a lot of us, we really overlooked Hamburg in this situation. I think that's also a key takeaway from this situation, is that Hamburg, you know what? They might be better than we thought, man. They really might be better than we thought. So this one ends a 1-point ball game. The Madrid Bravos escape 13-12 in their home opener against the Hamburg Sea Devils. All right. Next game, very highly anticipated, Matt, seeing this team. the brand new franchise, the Nordic Storm, with two of our favorite superstars, Glenn Tunga and Jadrian Clark, making their debut in the blue, playing the Helvetic Mercenaries down there in the land of Switzerland. Matt, thoughts on this one?
I mean, we said about Isaiah Weed so much in the lineup, and it was just a weed game, wasn't it? Like it was
Oh,
cinema. It was, you know, he had those moments, amazing throws. That first throw to Keelan Cole was excellent. That read option on 4th and 2 goes for like a 70-yard rushing touchdown. Cinema. And then picks and incompletions followed. But it's exactly what we expected. It's what we would delivered, and I love watching it every single time. But like you said, it's Helvetic, so they have such a good receiver core, such a great volume of running backs. Although Glenn got hurt, didn't go into the second half. Widmere did good. He got over 100 yards on the ground. We had a big 6, which I'm not sure. ELF Peter is going to have to check me on this. I think if we have the most quarterbacks who have thrown receiving touchdowns to big men, I think it would probably be Jadrian, because he had a couple last year and he's added one to his tally this year as well.
Yeah, hey, I got to give a little shout out to the broadcaster on this game, Joey Lundstrom, one of the best voices in the ELF, and on that big man touchdown, he called it a thick 6. Yeah. I love that, a thick 6. We had a thick 6 this week in the ELF, but dude, just what you said, Isaiah Weed, man, I love Isaiah Weed cinema. And here, I think, is this the end? It's a little bit blurry. Is this the end of his big touchdown run? I can't really see it there. Is that it? Yeah, it is. His 70-yard read option pull, 4th and 2, just ballsy on their own 30. First of all, going for it right there, and then just making magic happen. I also thought that Bolio looked good. The new wide receiver coming from the GFL, coming from Potsdam. It was a great target for Jadrian. And that, dude, I love Jadrian off the play action, man. And I think that's one of the biggest questions here was, okay, how is the Jadrian offense going to look without Whitinger now, obviously with him down in Madrid? And the Clark Shoop combo, man, is just as magic as it has ever been. I mean, they were making all sorts of opportunities, creating all sorts of opportunities. They ran a few of those kind of tight end slip outs, the play action rollout, the play that they ran against the Stuttgart Surge in the semifinal last year for the win in the rain. Ran that a few times, and it was a good debut for the Nordic Storm. Obviously, Glenn Tunga going down and not returning in the second half. While he was on the field, he looked absolutely fantastic. And we hope the best for Glenn Tunga. And so maybe we'll get some more information about that there. But he looked great, man, while he was in, at least. What do you think, Matt? Nordic, are we right to have them in the contender category after their first game here against Helvetic?
I gave the same criticism to DJ, so I want to be fair with the Nordic as well. We still only have one sample size, let's be honest, the Helvetic defense. I don't know what they like doing with these positional changes, but it's not just Crawford they've changed to a safety. They've also had DeMarco Artis, one of the best defensive ends, right, compared to Carl Kitchens. They got him playing inside linebacker. They got Timothy Sherman, who's a great outside linebacker, rush DN type. They got him playing safety. So I'm withholding expectations until we see them play a better defense. And we will get to see that very soon because Nordic have a tough schedule. But I do still think they are rightfully in contendership. You know, when you have this amount of talent, plus the homegrowns, I think the offensive line showed to be maybe a little bit weaker. So that's a concern. Same thing as Paris. But I think they are still within the top echelon of that big 6 that we kind of call the contenders for this season.
Yeah, absolutely. ELFPD in the chat also says Brendan Bolio was great. A mismatch for many. Absolutely, man. That's a big body, big athletic dude, and he'll be a prime target for Jadrian all season long. So the Nordic Storm stomping on the Helvetic Mercenaries. I do want to say, though, man, it was a 2-score game in like the middle of the third quarter. Like Helvetic was hanging around there. They didn't get absolutely steamrolled until the end. Okay. And that sometimes happens in some of these games, and the final score can really not totally accurately reflect exactly how the game went. But Helvetic put up a little bit of a fight there, and we got to give them their props for that, playing against an extremely, extremely talented squad. Nordic Storm coming away 56 points in their debut of the ELF. All right. Our next game. This one, we've got the Cologne Centurions against the Berlin Thunder. Matt, we said in our keys to the game last week on our Friday show keys to the game for Cologne Centurions is that they're going to need a damn miracle. And unfortunately, they did not get that miracle playing against Jacob Sullivan, who went 22 for 24. And hey, whatever criticisms you may have of the Cologne Centurions and their defense, going 22 for 24, it's pretty impressive. It's even impressive sometimes going on air. So we got to give him a shout out for that. Matt, thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, the Messiah did not rise to play defensive back for the Clone Centurions in this league because they struggled a lot, especially against the pass. We know that Sullivan is a very efficient, very accurate quarterback, but damn, 22 for 24, seven
Hey,
touchdowns, never looked remotely in trouble at all. Cologne just couldn't threaten. We said they needed a miracle, and it didn't come. Like Berlin was just far and away the better team. I had Sullivan in my fantasy football team. He delivered a big time for me. But yeah, I think Osborne played well. No, he got a lot of his yards on one catch. I think Osborne is a very, very talented receiver, definitely like a veteran of European football. So
okay.
I'm glad that he was able to show out on a not very impressive Cologne team. But it was a good performance by Berlin.
ELFpedia says Centurions 404 team not found. Error loading the team. Yeah, man, this is a tough one for Cologne, obviously, and they played much of the game with a homegrown German quarterback. And here in the chat, Michael Klein says, "Is Thunder so strong or Cologne so lost?" I would say Cologne is so lost, wouldn't you, Matt?
Yeah, I'd strongly agree. I think Berlin are not as good as a Hamburg, so I don't think they're going to be in the middle of the pack. I think they're definitely lower mid, as we've discussed before.
Lower mid.
Cologne are definitely going to be competing with the worst. I think they're probably the worst team in the league. That's my opinion, but we said that at FIBA. We were just trying to keep it quiet so the fans didn't hear us talking about that team. But yeah, it's a tough one for them, and you can only really hope that they get it together next week and can show a more comprehensive performance.
Yeah, Matt, you better be careful, man. You're making a lot of enemies this year, including a team we'll talk about in a little bit. Henry Jones in the chat says, "I think the Thunder will only win games against Cologne." That's interesting. I mean, Matt, who do you think that the Thunder can compete against any other teams that we're talking about as at least pretty solid?
It's I gotta look at their schedule. I know they play Hamburg, but if you looked at that before Hamburg's performance, I maybe would have given them a bit more credit. But they also do play the Enthroners. We saw they got torched against the Panthers, so I think wins could be there for the Thunder team against the Enthroners. Maybe they try and make it competitive against someone like Hamburg, but I think they may still want to get the Enthroners. I think they maybe get 3 wins.
All right, Jacob Sullivan, I hope you hear that. And I hope we're giving you some bulletin board material and you keep passing at a 98% completion rate all season long, brother. We are rooting for you, even if sometimes on this show we do take a little bit of jabs. All right, moving on to our next game. This one, Matt, I love this rivalry that's bubbling up here in the Central. The T-Roll Raiders at the Munich Ravens. Nice little football game there in Bavaria. And Russell Tabor, the debut of the 21-year-old new quarterback for the Munich Ravens. Interesting situation. Kind of inconsistent for him, I would say. He was picked off early in the first quarter. I wouldn't say he had a great debut. He was 18 for 37, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. However, in my opinion, there were nice moments. And just like we said last week, Matt, on Friday with the keys to the game, Malik Stanley, he did prove to be kind of like a safe haven target for Tabor in his first ever ELF game. He had 18 completions, 9 of them, half of them were to Malik Stanley. That's a big body presence right there. So that's great for the young quarterback. And they were able to pull out the win here. Matt, thoughts on this game?
I think this game has probably in the whole of this week the biggest amalgamation of my favorite players in the league. Like there's so many guys I want to talk about. We'll touch on Tabor. I think he's still struggling. He's still only 21. So reading defenses is definitely going to be something that we see him develop through the year. He hasn't played a ton in North Carolina. He did play in college. So he is coming in pretty fresh, especially into European football. It's his first season in the ELF, having 1 season in Spain. He showed good mobility with his legs as well, which I liked. I think that he is going to be a very good player. But I want to talk about Nitsanada. He is so good, and I'm you know what, I'm fed up of us putting asterisks when we talk about some of these Europeans. They're the best European corner. Nitsanada proved to me, and I've been a fan of him since for years. Me and Jamal have been talking about him to anyone that will listen. He is one of the best corners in the league, full stop. He locked up a very, very good Ja'Cory Sullivan. He looked sublime. I am a massive Cincinnati fan, and I think that he is probably one of the best corners in the league, regardless of anything. He is phenomenal. The key to this team, there's so many guys, even someone like Jonas Rigbal could be in the Defensive Player of the Year candidacy. Like, even Fitzpatrick was amazing off the edge as well. Like, oh my God, Cole Coleman's return, I'm so here for, because he came in last year from Vienna, kind of off the couch, didn't know the playbook, didn't do too well, and people kind of wrote him off, but he didn't write back because now he's performing well in Munich. I love it. Oh my goodness, the corner just got the pick then. Like,
Yeah.
I'm such a fan of him. I was giving him praise all the way through, and I'm just blanking on names now because I'm just going into overdrive at how much I love John Walls. There we go. Like, there's so many guys on both sides of this team. This was my favorite game, even though it was a defensive standoff and wasn't high scoring. Connor Miller played well. There's a big thing though, Nick. I wanted to ask you about it. The run game for the Raiders let them down massively. Like Connor Miller, you cannot expect him to make these 3rd and 12, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 9 passes at every single opportunity. You need this run game to start kicking in. If they had last year's run game, that was averaging 5 yards a carry, plus Connor Miller's efficiency and overall good game, they would have won this game. They didn't.
Yeah,
but, oh my God, man. So many players.
You don't want to have Connor Miller be your leading rusher, which he was with 25 yards. Nothing against Connor. I think you would agree. He's not necessarily thought of as that big of a dual threat. And when he's leading your team in rushing, especially when you've got some really great running backs like Hasselvanter, like Bonatti, they just got to show up. That run game has got to show up for them to, create a little bit of ease for Connor Miller. Because I agree, man. I think Connor looked good. I think he fits well there. Just going back to the chat to speaking of quarterbacks, we're talking about Russell Tabor, and Alex Mauchow said Russell Tabor had his first beer after this W.
That's a good one to think about.
It's legal, 21. Well, he's in Germany. It's legal. It's technically 16, probably 12.
16? That's 18 here.
Yeah, it's Germany, man. And then Karen Hager says, in Rush, we trust. Jamal's in the chat. We've got Jamal, athlete. Jamal, you missed it. You got a little bit of a shout out earlier for calling the potential, or at least upset potential, lookouts with the Hamburg game. You got a little shout out there. Got to go back and watch that. And he does say Munich is the best team in that division. And then just looking over at some of the other players who play, like Justin Rodney, he rushed for over 100 yards. Like they had the run game going, and that gave Russell Tabor maybe a little bit of breathing room because, he was less than 50% completion percentage. And they really did pull away at the end. The final score doesn't completely reflect how close this game was. But Matt, going back to what you were saying about Nitz, man, young Nitz. Oh my goodness, this kid is such a baller. He plays with such a swagger and such an intensity. I'm a massive, massive fan, just like you are, dude. And I think it's fair to say he's one of the best, regardless of A or E or home ground. One of the best corners in the league, man. We gotta stop putting the asterisk next to young Nitz. So there we have it. The T-Roll Raiders on the road against Munich, dropping by 13. Munich Ravens escaping 20-7. But I'm excited for the rematch of this one, man. This is bubbling up to be one of our favorite ELF rivalries. They're close in proximity. There's a lot of good stuff there. So we'll see how that plays out when they play each other once again. All right, moving on to our next game. Matt, I know you're excited about this one because last show you put on your Prague Lions hat. The Vienna Vikings traveling to Prague to play, shall I say, your Lions, Matt? Your Lions. And you know what? 28-6. I think a lot of people were kind of impressed with how well Prague held up in this game. Talk to me about this and why you think that they held up pretty well against the championship game appearing Vienna Vikings.
Here we go. So I know Bosso 007 is going to be hyped till we go onto the Prague Lions because he's been excited for this one. That's my burner account. I'm going to put my phone down now so I can stop in the chat. Ben Holmes, he's fantastic, but if he wasn't so mobile, they would have had a lot more sacks because their pressure was getting. This is one of the best offensive plans in Europe ever. He was getting pressured. They did have an injury to Jalen Embry. He did not play in this game, so they had their backup American corner come in. He played fine, he played well. Ken Hike's one of the best corners in the league out down that hill. He's phenomenal. One of the players that when they brought him in, so happy because he's so underappreciated and he's so talented. Of course, Yannick Meyer had an explosive game, but to keep including Noah Torre and Reese Horn and Kari under like 30, 40 rushing yards each,
Yeah.
incredible. I know that Yannick Meyer had a big one, but this performance is the best performance that Prague have ever had. Like across the board, the defensive line got pressure. The offensive line wasn't perfect, but it's so much when you look at last year's offensive line, this year's offensive line, it's night and day. To put in a performance halftime down by one score against a team that a lot of us consider the best team in the league is such a positive thing. Prague fans, it looks pretty stacked there. Should be excited for that team. And I think they got Hamburg next week. And oh my God, inject that game into my veins. I need the Hamburg versus Prague game. I think could be a sleeper, like classic. I'm so excited for that.
Okay, Matt, you're building some anticipation there. Hamburg Prague next week. We'll be talking about it on Friday. Okay, Alex Malchow, he did say sloppy game, TBH, but the Vikings defense showed up in the end. Yannick Meyer was really impressive. Alex, you were on the call for this game. Great job, by the way. I'm sure that was exciting to be able to call for Ben VP. You know, Matt, we were talking about him last week. I love Ben Holmes. Maybe not as much as Alex Malchow does. I don't think that's physically possible for anyone to love Ben Holmes as much as Alex Malchow does. But I'm a massive fan. I was very impressed with him kind of off script. I mean, you were talking about him just being so elusive in the pocket. And I think his first two touchdown passes, the one to Noah Tourette and then the one to Reese Horn, were just totally off script. Him just creating something very, Mahomes-esque there and super impressive with that. But Matt, do you think, I mean, like I said, this is a much closer game than I think a lot of people anticipated. Is that an indictment on the Vikings or is that a compliment to the new Prague Lions?
I think it's a compliment to Prague. Like, we know Vienna good. They got great offensive line, they got great weapons, great quarterback, great defense, go on and on and on and on and on. The question was, how could Prague step up for that? And they stepped up really damn well. I don't think
Right.
anyone expected them to be as good, except for maybe me and people that knew, like, looked into their team and saw how talented some of these players are. We are in the midst of a golden generation for Prague. You look at some of their homegrowns, they are in their prime. Like, this is now the time to start competing with some of these teams, get up to a good record and build those foundations for the future. Even Javarian Smith looked reinvigorated, showed some of that big play potential that he has. Again, playing with a great defense, so it didn't pop off statistically. But I think when he has his hair out like that, like a proper mane, he plays so much better. When he was having the cornrows playing, he played well. But when he lets it out, I love it. He looks so good, running around the pocket, making plays. I am so this game confirmed to me that Prague are just the best team that's ever been in the Czech Republic.
Okay, there we go. So you're for Javarian Smith letting the main out, letting it rage. Don't hide the cheddar. Let it go. All right. Hey, all right, Matt. Last thing here on this game, because maybe not everyone agrees with you. DRV8722 says Vikings played at half power. And I do have to admit, when I saw the score and then went back and watched the game, initially I thought, oh, maybe the Vikings must have pulled some of their starters. I mean, this is way closer than I thought. Vikings played at half power. You agree with that or not?
Disagree. And Ken
There we
Hoke's
go.
an all ELF corner. He's not easy to pass on. Like he's excellent. And you've got other players in that team that are excellent too. You got Jasper Fritz, starting left tackle. He's played at D1 level. Like this is not your grandfather's Prague Lions team, as I've been saying throughout the last few weeks. They might not be in full swing of it yet, but Prague showed they're very much improved from last year. I'm not saying Prague going to go for the championship win. I'm not crazy, but this was a visible improvement. I think anyone that says this wasn't very, I've just seen the ELFpedia, but no beer bomber. They still held Horn, Torre, Kari to relatively modest games, which
Fair.
I'm not going to lie, not very many teams have ever done that.
Fair. Absolutely fair. So the Vienna Vikings do get the win on the road at Prague 28-6. But hey, story of this one. Is this a new Prague Lions? Matt Bressington says yes. And see how that plays out this season. All right, moving on to our last game of week 1. My goodness, this was a fun one, Matt, and I was there in attendance on the sideline. Gazi Stadion in Stuttgart, the Frankfurt Galaxy going on the road to the Stuttgart Surge. Some people kind of like to call this a derby game. It's not technically a derby. They're not in the same city, but they are pretty close. Frankfurt Galaxy fans traveled well. This thing was packed out. Maxie, I don't know if you have the attendance, if you could let me know or let us know. We could put it up there. I met the man himself, Marcus Kintz, who is an absolute ELF live chat all-star. We met in person right there. But I think that the main story to take away from this game is, okay, the Stuttgart Surge are absolutely dominant, and these two teams absolutely hate each other. I think the final score, when I say that the Surge were dominant, the final score does not really reflect at all how this game went. It was 30-6 with a couple minutes left. The Surge pulled their starters. They had a punt return touchdown at the end there. Frankfurt did. And so this was really a dominant performance by the Stuttgart Surge. Matt, are you surprised at all? Because I know you've got a little bit of we'll call it a beef with Frankfurt, but you also say that they're a very talented team. Were you surprised by how well Stuttgart handled this talented Frankfurt team?
No, I'm not surprised. I said before Frankfurt are very talented, but that's about their offense. Their defense is not near as talented. And Surge offense is just, oh my goodness. I don't mean to use the word electric when talking about Surge. A little bit cheesy, but it is. I mean, look at Riley's look at Riley's numbers. So efficient. So I don't think he made a mistake the whole game, really, honestly. And Tommy Wayewa looks back to full health, running physical. A lot more between the tackles he usually does too. And then honestly, that section of running backs, all of them, just amazing. You got Albert. I'm not going to try and say your last name, Albert, but I love you. And then you got Kai Hunter as well that has standout performance. Jeff Cotton looked good in his debut. Pedro had a couple catches. Guy had that just disgusting stiff arm. Oh my goodness, violent. And then the defensive line for the Surge was excellent, but the Galaxy's defense they couldn't tackle. Like they missed so many tackles. And I like Toby Naylor a lot. We played together back in the day. He made some really good plays, but because the defensive line for the Galaxy was poor, he was asked to do a lot more than he should have been able to do. And so he missed a lot of tackles, made a lot of tackles. But the positives for the Galaxy is that Sandro looked really damn good. He looked really going to run. It's the first thing, right? The first half of the first drive for the Galaxy was terrifying. And it fell apart.
Hey, that first drive, I think it was like 8 minutes. That Surge defense was on the field for 8 minutes. And having been in that experience before, it is a little bit, it gets you on your toes when you're on the field for that long, especially at the start of the game. And you're thinking, oh man, is this how the entire game is going to be? Are they going to be able to march down the field and eat up the clock like this? The Surge defense was able to bolster up and kind of stop that the rest of the day. And I think, man, what you were saying about Riley is just so precise. He was 14 for 19 for nearly 200 yards. Just very, very, he rushed for 2 touchdowns on quarterback sneaks as they got down to the goal line there. When you talk to Riley, this is what whenever I asked him, like, how would you describe your game? He's like, I'm not flashy. I don't do anything crazy. That's like big, huge highlights necessarily. I just try to not to make mistakes, give what the defense gives me. And I think that shows up here in the stats that we've got right here. Just a very precise, surgical performance from Riley. I got to give props to that Surge offensive line too, man. These dudes are just beasts and opening up holes there. I love seeing Tamawa in the Surge jersey. Nice little change-up style when you got like Tamawa and then Kai Hunter. Kai Hunter's more just straight downhill back, and Tamawa a little bit more elusive there. And I think that's a tough kind of back and forth for defense. What we got here? Cyrus Giovanni says Surge linebackers were a big problem in the game yesterday. And he's kind
of about it too. They feel passionate about it too.
Loving the chat here. Jamal says Hennessy's low-key the best fantasy quarterback to have, especially if he kept having rushing TDs. That's very true here. And so the Surge pulled away, or really just kind of dominant performance. I love this kind of rivalry bubbling up as well, Matt. Like we're talking about the T-Roll Raiders and the Munich Ravens as sort of a nice little close proximity rivalry. Same thing can be said here about the Surge and the Frankfurt Galaxy. I also think that the Frankfurt Galaxy, to give them their props, they do have a lot of talent there, and I think that they will figure it out a little bit more. I think as the season goes on, they've got a new head coach coming from the States, coaching the Philadelphia Stars, and so they're just trying to figure out and adapt to maybe the European game just a little bit there. And Matt, you did get a shout out from the Frankfurt Galaxy social media team as they put you in their caption, which I wish we had that up here that we could throw it up. But Matt, what are your final takeaways on this game?
I mean, they're in my watch along chat as well. We were talking on Saturday, so they admitted that I know ball. I don't think anyone else doubted that, but they admitted it finally. And I like what you said. That was a surgical. I don't think you even picked up on surgical.
No, I didn't pick up on that pun, dude.
Up on the pun. I thought that was on purpose. So you didn't allow it. I was kind of disappointed you didn't, but I think you summed it up perfectly. Surgical performance. that undisciplined though came in for Frankfurt. I mean, we talked
Right.
about the flags, the two delay game, that first
Oh,
drive, two delay games, a holding, and then a sack. That destroyed that drive. That 8-minute drive, you get barely anything out of it.
yeah.
That's gonna have to be cleaned up. We'll see if they can do it, but it's a chippy game, and even Surge got some like personal fouls in those kickoffs, so it's developing nicely. That's a nice little rivalry in a German one as well. It's nice. I like it.
Chippy is, to say the least, man. There was a lot, let's call it, of extracurricular activities in that game. You know what? As a fan, I absolutely love it. Stuttgart Surge looking good in week 1, and there we have it. Those are our games, Matt, for week 1 of season 5 of the European League of Football. And there we have it, all of our scores. Beautiful graphic right there from our lovely, talented producer, Maxie. Way to go, Maxie. And Matt, your Prague Lions right there. They're in the mix, man. They're in the mix. What was your favorite game of the week, Matt?
Oh, I think it was from like an entertainment or like a tension. It's got to be round 5, Paris, or maybe Raiders Ravens, because I'm just so happy to see such talent. I think I'm going to go Raiders Ravens. Just the talent that was on display is some of my favorite within the league. So I'm going to go for that one. What about
Okay,
you?
I like
I
that
got a
too. Yeah,
feeling.
I mean, Raiders Ravens is one of my favorite. I mean, obviously, it's tough to fight the bias of being at a game in person. However, it wasn't an especially close game, but it was exciting just because of the energy and the tension between these two teams. But I also I loved watching the Madrid Bravos and the Hamburg Sea Devils. Man, Saturday night, watching that, being a little bit surprised by what was going on there. It kept me hooked till the end. It was great. It was just a great story of a football game right there. So there we have it. Week 1. Man, I am so excited for this season, bro. Gosh. All
I'm
right.
so fired up. You should have seen me like 10 minutes before the show. I was just getting hyped up for the
Man.
first game.
It's fun. We're about to have a great summer, everybody. All right. Now let's move into our final segment, and we're going to be doing this every single week. And we're gonna need you guys in the chat here. Get your input. We're gonna do the Citizen MVP of the week. So how this works is Matt and I will both select a player to be nominated for MVP of the week, presented by Citizen. Okay. And then they will put that on social media. And then you guys go and vote on Instagram who you think should be the MVP of the week. All right. So let's open it up here, guys, in the chat. If you've got anybody you'd like to nominate, anybody you think had a great performance, put their name in there and we'll talk about them. All right. Matt, who are the guys that we have in conversation? Max, you want to throw up some of these names for us?
So the first one. Do you want to take it? Do you want me to take the first one?
You got it.
There we go. Jacob Sullivan, Mr. Efficient. I kind of said he was a bit of a, dragon screen guy for the year. He kind of pushed that agenda a little bit by ruining it by passing downfield so much. Just an efficient masterclass. Barely put a foot wrong. Finished with 7 touchdowns. Literally nothing wrong. Like everything was perfect. Everything was on time. Every throw was spectacular.
There we go, Jacob Sullivan. All right, next one who's in our conversation, the man himself, Jadrian Dart Clark, 20 for 30, 258 passing yards, 5 passing touchdowns in the ELF debut for the new franchise Nordic Storm, our former MVP of the league and 2-time champion, looking in the same form here. Granted, okay, Matt, against Helvetic, sure, but he looked pretty damn good. So Jadrian Clark, he's in the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely he is. Who's next? Who have I got to talk about? DJ Irons, my favorite quarterback in the league, as everyone knows. He played very well, very efficient. Numbers don't exactly pop in terms of yardage, but 5 touchdowns. Honestly, touchdowns are all that matters. Touchdown win games. You get 500 yards, 0 touchdowns, you won't score anything. So he did 5 touchdowns on the ground, many of them rushing. Looked great with his legs. Showed a little bit off with the arm. Ultimately got a blowout win in his first ever game in Europe.
There you go, Matt. Contain your excitement for your boy DJ Irons being in the conversation here, week 1. All right, next one, Maxie. Brendan Bolio, first ever game in the ELF, connecting a lot with Jadrian. What's he had there? 8 catches. I can't see the graphic there, but he had 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards. Really looked good. Big body presence. Really kind of lived up to expectations, I would say, of being the new A target for Jadrian there up in Nordic. So Bolio in the conversation.
Absolutely. Who's next? Who have I got? Bryce Goggins. We just talked about how great Sullivan was with his efficiency. Bryce Goggins was quite a lot of that. Finished with big numbers, multiple touchdowns. Look at that average of his catch as well. Great game for him. Debut as well within the league. kind of, some people said they're worried about Aaron Jackson leaving the team, but it looks like they're in good hands with Bryce Goggins.
Alex Malchow's in the chat, and he's saying Ben VP. Hey, man, Alex, we love Ben VP, but I don't think he had a great statistical performance this week. I don't know. Matt, do you know what his stats were?
Not to get him up, but he was good. I don't think he was MVP worthy. Literally, I've got the stats right here. He had 246 yards, 2 touchdowns. Completion percentage wasn't wild. So he had 17 yards on the ground. He was good. I wouldn't say elite.
All right. Who's our next one here, Maxie?
There we go. Dan.
My man. Devin Burrell. Okay, you guys. And I know we're talking about they played the Enthroners. Okay, whatever. He had 1 punt return touchdown and 1 pick six. I cannot stress enough how rare something like this is in a football game. You know how hard it is to do one of those things? This man did both of those things in a game. Regardless of opponent, this needs to be in the conversation for MVP. We got to give props to our defensive player. So Devin Burrell is in the conversation. All right. Let's see who the chat is saying. Flamore Simon also. Matt, what do you think? You think he deserves to be in the conversation?
I really want to give it to Flamore Simon. Look at the all-star chat we got, by the way. We got Vidagani, we got Jason DeCary as well. We got all-stars everywhere. But the Mascara and Flamore Simon, I really want to give it to one of those two, but I don't think we have like the statistical or the things for them at the moment, but if Maxie could show me up at a producer message, if we can have Flamore Simon, I don't know. But...
Ooh, okay, hold on. All right, so here's the deal, Matt.
We can.
There you go. You're a bit undecided, Matt, on who you want to nominate, and I am concrete in who I want to nominate, and it's Devin Burrell, because what else can a player do, a non-offensive player do, to get nominated for MVP of the week? What else can you do? 2 touchdowns, not on offense. Special teams and defense are 2/3 of the game of football. And he scored a touchdown on both of them. Very, very impressive. Devin Burrell is going to be my nominee for MVP of week 1. And Jamal says, why are people still kicking to Burrell? I don't know, man. I'm asking the same question. I'm glad they do because it's fun to watch. Marcus, my man, says Burrell has my vote so far as well. All right, Matt, what are you thinking? Are you getting influenced by the chat at all?
I'm being influenced massively by the chat. I'm being influenced by my heart. I said Flamore Simon was the best linebacker in the league, and some people didn't believe me. Some people gave me some stick for that, and he ends up getting not only 10 tackles and a pass breakup, the game-winning interception on the final drive. I'm going Flamore Simon, the German inside linebacker, outside linebacker for the Ryan Fire.
I could not be more thrilled to know that we have selected 2 defensive players as the nominees, and to know that, for a matter of fact, a defensive player will win MVP of week 1 of this season of the ELF. So there we have it. Devin Burrell and Flamore Simon are our nominees for MVP. Guys, do not forget to go on to social media. I think the post will probably be up in about an hour or so, and you can vote on Instagram and give one of these guys the first MVP award of the week. All right. There we have it. Matt, that's our show, man. Week 1 is in the books, dude. That's crazy.
That's a 10 out of 10 instant classic week, no?
Fantastic. I know some people like to, jab at some of the blowouts here, but those were expected, and we actually had a couple games that were closer than expected there. You got a little bit of everything, and that's a fun story of week 1 of the ELF. So, guys, everyone in the chat, thank you so much for being here with us. It's so fun to do this with all you. Matt, love hosting the show with you, man. It's always a pleasure.
I appreciate you. The feelings likewise. We both just bounced off each other so well, even though we got rival countries. And we even picked each other's positions for the MVP of the week as well. So nice.
Look at that. Look at us. We're fine. We're reaching across the aisle. There we go. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for being in the chat, and we will see you on the next one. Goodbye.